you guys are okay. Okay, I'd like to call this meeting to order. Would everyone please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We'd like to adjust the agenda order, and actually we want to do the 10-year appointments after public comment. Is everyone okay with that on the board?
Yep.
Okay. So we'll start out with our approval of the minutes, the April 9th minutes. Any discussion on those?
Make a motion.
Second.
Motion second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Those are carried. Next, we have approval of the April 16th special meeting minutes as presented. Any discussion on those?
So
Make a
moved.
motion. Second.
Motion second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Next, we have approval of the CSE, CPSE recommendations. A motion to approve those.
I'll make a motion.
Second.
Motion second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's carried. And now we're up to public comment. Do we have any public comment? Everyone's here for a special purpose? All right. So with that, we'll adjust our agenda and we will welcome our personnel tenure appointments. Turn it over to Dr. Mack.
Turn it over. Who wants to go first? So I'm going to introduce Kate Hoffmeister. She's one of our fantastic school social workers. I can't even begin to describe how much time she saves us by dealing with things when they're small problems before they get to be big problems. And one of the best things about Kate is not only is she knowledgeable, but she will take care of things, like I said before, we even know they need to be taken care of. So there's absolutely no hesitation in my recommendation to Mr. Loomis with me for Kate for a tenure.
I'm going to be recommending Angela Saporito for the high school. She teaches high school art. Angela actually has a probably unique story that most tenure teachers don't. I remember teaching when she was subbing here, and we were alongside each other as teachers, and she was a sub. And then she worked into a long-term sub position and did her student teaching combined. I think we actually had probably done 2 or 3 different long-term sub positions.
Yeah, just about.
And then she became a certified teacher here. So that's a pretty unique track to stay with the school for so long. Angela really has a student-centered approach. She provides opportunities for our kids to be successful, which at the end of the day, that's what we're here for, and Angela does that in such a fantastic way. She's such a positive influence here on our kids and our staff. I also do not hesitate recommending Angela, and I hope you have a long, successful, and happy career here at Walton. So congratulations.
At Townsend, I have 2 staff members. First, I have Jessica Warzel. She teaches 2nd grade. Ms. Warzel has very positive relationships with her students, and she collaborates well with her colleagues, and she's a wonderful asset to the Townsend Elementary, so congratulations. And I'm here to recommend her. I also have Christine Harvey, who is our social worker. Christine also has very positive relationships with her students, and she works collaboratively with her colleagues as well. She's an asset to our families in providing support and bridging that gap from home to school. She's actively involved in our classrooms and holds a girls club after school, and supports the Ed Club. So, Christine Harvey.
Okay, I will ask for a vote on the resolution. We have a motion second, right? Sorry, thank you.
Second.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Motion second, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Congratulations.
Congratulations.
Angela, Savarito, please come up here. Congratulations.
Thank you. Yay.
Congratulations.
With that, we are going to recess for a 15-minute break?
10 minute.
10-minute break. We're just gonna keep us on track. We'll be back on at 6:15. All are welcome to stay, but after that, there's no obligation to stay unless you want to hear the rest of the agenda and hang out with us. So we'll be back at 6:15. All right, we'll return to regular session, and we'll start back up with our discussion items. So first on our discussion items is our sports merger report and discussion. Gentlemen like to lead that?
Okay, sure. I believe you have access to a few different documents. I believe the first one, I forgot the order that they're in, or if they are in order for you. But one of them is a summary of the parent survey. We did a survey the first year. We were merged just for soccer. We did that in the fall. We tweaked the survey a little bit this time, trying to get some more input from not just parents, but from coaches and student athletes also. You can see in there's a lot of things that are kind of in the middle of thoughts, and then there's some extremes. Some people really thought that the merger was the greatest thing that ever happened to either school. Some people thought it was the worst thing that happened to the school. And anytime you're getting input from a large group of people, that tends to happen. A lot of the things that they pointed out on the survey, whether it was parents, coaches, or student athletes, as areas we need to improve on were things that we recognized also. A lot of those things are included in one of the other documents that has the adjustments moving forward. There's some of the things on there are related to the process we use to select our coaches. And that's one of the things that we have been talking about well before we got this results of the survey. Is all right, if we're going to be a merged programs, true merged programs, we need to be working together to choose the leadership and to get the people that both of us and downs will feel comfortable with. Another portion of it was the communication aspect. We created the Walton, the WD, DW, whichever way you want to go, Facebook page, which has been really good for communication in a lot of ways. But it really goes back to something that I know on our side, on Walton's side, we've struggled with for a long time, ever since I've started coaching here, is the communication piece to parents in the season. That Facebook page is great for practices canceled, the games changed because of weather, those types of things. But it's typically, there's a lot more communication that needs to happen when you're running a team. We've tried different ways in Walton that have been somewhat successful, but we need to find a way that actually works and is, nothing's gonna be 100% successful when it comes to communication. we send things out via email, via phone, via text when we're doing a school messenger. Some people miss it stuff. So we gotta find a way that gets to most people if we can. So those are some of the things on there. Another thing that we looked at is, as we, in baseball and softball, we've kind of been forced to adjust the location of games more based on the fields being ready or not ready. Downsville's fields drain much better than ours, for example, so there's days where they can host a baseball game where you go down our field, you're in mud. For the winter sports, we didn't really build that flexibility into it probably as much as we should have. We based it on the beginning of the year numbers, per se, that we thought we were gonna have 5 kids from Downsville, 7 from Walton, so we try to not too close to 50-50. Some of the sports that didn't turn out to be the case. So some of the things on there that were complaints or things that they thought went poorly was that aspect of, but at the end of the season, there's only 2 kids from Downsville on the team. Why are we playing the last 2 games there? That was because early in the season, we kind of chose to do that based on the numbers. And, I think we need to have that flexibility moving forward of, all right, make sure, we get the games in both places, make sure if there's a senior on the team for either side, where they get a senior night in their home gym, but then be able to adjust those things a little better. The other piece I forgot, which actually might be the real first thing on there, was the numbers of, so it was what we projected we'd have on the teams and what we're actually on them, and it's broken down of all the levels, and then on the far right it shows for both Walton and Downsville, and then overall, if we had more kids come out for a sport or less based on what we anticipated. So, a lot of them are very close, most of them are very close. Volleyball, we actually had 10 more come out than we thought. Sports like field hockey and football were within 1 or 2, which you're gonna fluctuate there. A lot of that's tough too, because some of our sports with lower numbers, the kids kind of played because of peer pressure. Their buddies said, hey, we're not gonna have a team unless you play. So they played, but they weren't really in love with the sport. So it's hard to tell the reason why some kids played or didn't play. I guess if any board members have any questions, I know we can address those. Some of the adjustments are pretty self-explanatory. Some of them might be a little confusing the way we worded them, or without the background knowledge, it just not make sense at all.
Yeah, I think the survey and all that's good information. The progression forward and what you're taking into account does reflect a lot of the comments you got back that way. We knew some of the sports were going to be tough because you can only put so many people on a court, for example, and if you have a lot of kids going out for a sport and there's a limited numbers that can go on it, it's easier to take care of 11 than it is to take care of 5. And we knew that right up front. We knew that's going to be, some of those are going to be issues. Some of the questions I would have going forward, if we can see data on proposed projected numbers going next year again. I thought that was very helpful in the fall to kind of see, I don't know, rest of you, everyone thought about that, but the projected numbers, you weren't really that far off. I mean,
no,
plus or minus a few here and there. I mean, I thought that projected was a good way.
I was pleasantly surprised how close we were, to be honest.
To give you guys a number to go with, and then you can understand the implications. So numbers projected the same way we've seen that data would be helpful. The other thing is if there's any potential class changes again. If any of the sports are going to result in a class change, I honestly, I have a personal issue with that. I'm not sure if everybody else does, but if we're going up a league and we're competing in a league we are right now, we go up a tier for the sake of just because we merge, we should look at that carefully and
I can
make sure
tell you
it makes
based on
sense.
the preliminary numbers, there's one sport where that's the case, and then the following year, our numbers alone would have been, I can't remember which one it is. One will be because of the new numbers and 6 classifications, they added a AAA classification, so in both boys and girls basketball will be a B next year, along with quite a few other schools who have traditionally been C's.
Yeah, I think, so I take your time and definitely, I think take your time to get all that numbers together so we can understand it.
Absolutely.
And show, that Dell has in the same boat, like, if it's just a section change, that's a different scenario than, hey, you guys are, you're causing a a strife where you have to compete up in the next level, and we're, doing what we're doing at our current level, so. And then you already addressed potential, schedule changes on that, so that's all I had. I don't know anybody else would have for data coming forward.
The only issue I had was readability of the paperwork you put out. You try to use a bit, it may cost another tree, but use a little bit bigger font so you can read it.
I forgot, Mr. Burdine, you didn't use the computer to zoom in. I'll remember that next time.
Part of the discussion that we've had.
I had it zoomed in at 150 on my computer for that exact reason.
Part of the discussion that we had administratively, and we had a meeting, with Rob Reinhardt, in case everybody knows Rob, that's superintendent of Downsville. Bert Reed is the athletic director, dean of students from Downsville, here with us, and we had a meeting, superintendents and athletic directors, and went through basically this, and then had some other conversation, frank conversations, personnel conversations, you name it. And one of the things that we all agree with is as we move forward, if we move forward, everything goes well in the spring, all the data comes in, board's agreeable, which administratively, I know we feel it's the way to go. At this point in time, depending on the next data or anything else we get that changes our mind on that. But if we move forward, the time now is we've gotten through the first year, we've done systems, time to address the changes, and then time to look at leadership and program development on behalf of our students. The merger is to long-term keep the programs and opportunities for kids, but now are just no different than anything else. We have to look at effectiveness, looked at efficiencies, we looked at strategies, we've gotten it, and we'll make adjustments. Now we have to look at effectiveness, which our kids deserve. So that'll be our focus moving forward administratively, is how can we make the opportunities better and stronger for our students if we continue down this road. So,
I do have a few questions. Can you remind me what teams are represented by the survey? Is it just, it's just the winter sports, or is it?
For the winter, it would have just been the modified to varsity basketball teams.
Okay, and it didn't go out to families that maybe were cut? It doesn't
It
represent that?
didn't, we didn't
Okay.
have any cuts on any level.
I think in some sports there were. In basketball, there were cuts.
I must have
So
missed
the-
an email too. As a parent, I didn't get a survey, but that may be my bad. I'll look back and make sure I didn't miss something.
Yeah, we can look at that. I thought there were some
But the,
conversations of playing time that led to a few kids not staying on the team, but I don't know if anybody was
okay.
cut, but I can look into that.
So the table with the data and the numbers, that doesn't actually, my point was that doesn't actually represent kids who went out for the team, right? There could have actually been more kids who went out, and the number that's shown is actually who ended up on the final.
Yeah, no, that's
roster.
based on, who, and it probably was mid-season, so if you made it to mid-season, you got counted on there, so there could also be some kids who after that point quit the team that are included in that number also.
Okay.
So it could kind of go both ways, I guess is what I'm saying. I know modified and the two varsity levels, we didn't have any cuts. Modified, we never do, unless something comes up and we realize there's 50 kids and, then we have to look into something, but that would be kind of a good problem to have, I guess.
So there could be, in this list, based on the numbers that dropped, there could be 46 potential in what you're talking about.
Right.
And we had 76 respondents, if I remember right. So, yeah, I mean, it could be a large data set potentially.
The other piece with that survey is if, we didn't have a way in place, so if a parent had a kid on modified and a kid on varsity, they could have filled it out 2 times, so.
Or the other way, I think I saw a couple merged comments.
Yeah.
Yeah, varsity
So-
and J, or like a.
So it's definitely not a foolproof survey, if that makes sense, but, it was a way to relatively quickly collect the information that we're hoping to collect.
When we're talking about the coaches, is that going down to just a single coach? Is that what we're talking about, or? In any
What we had
situations, or-
discussed is depending on the situation. There's certain sports where a single coach might be all that's needed. There's other sports where you need two coaches.
Right.
The one thing that we definitely, we discussed this before this survey, we need to make sure that it's clear who the head coach is
Right.
and who the assistant coach is.
Yeah.
And we did that well in some cases and not as well in other cases.
Mhm.
And that's really falls on the two of us, more than the coaches.
I know
We need
this-
to formally do it.
Right, we need to
Literally assign somebody the head coach, whether it's two or not, and then work with the head coach for leadership and program development.
I just know something we discussed before was that if we do go down to, excuse me, a single head coach, that there's a representative from the other school liaison or somebody just to
Right.
be there to be an ear for those kids at that school. That was,
Especially, I think it's a lot more important initial years of any merger to have that,
yep. You talked about I guess in the head coach program ownership responsibilities. Is that you're basically gonna have a designated program lead and they're gonna
Well,
set up a plan from modified all the way?
Yeah, I mean, maybe even
Ideally
down
a
to
booster,
club
right,
level.
booster all the way.
And
up. Okay,
again,
yeah.
some of our sports have been doing that,
Yeah,
some of them not as well. And that's something we identified pretty early on is that needs to happen if our kids are gonna have the best chance to be successful.
yeah,
So that they need to be learning the skills at a young age, not all of a sudden as a senior, try that, you've never done it before, but.
yeah. No, I think that would be great. That'd be really good. And then the end of form, or end of season form for all head coaches, what is that, or what are you thinking there?
So we each kind of had our own different ones, so what we wanted to be able to do is consolidate that in a way that means so some of the things on that is the, the coaches always give us a summary of the season, the number of kids who started on the team, the number who finished. Another piece of that is the inventory of the program. It doesn't make any sense if we're a merged soccer program for each of us to be buying 50 soccer balls a year. And, Bert and I have talked about that as we're ordering things, but the ones who are gonna know that better than us in most cases is the coach. And he's gonna say, all right, so we only had 6 balls that the modified team could use to practice at the end of the year, we need some more. So, that's something that can be on that form.
It helps drive the budget development. So,
Right.
Yeah.
Get a solid inventory in writing, so the athletic director, when they come in the next half a year later, in the budget development, they have something to work off.
Has there been discussion about having an end of season survey given to the athletes so that they can provide feedback on how the season went? I think one of the things that I saw in a lot of the comments was that maybe there's a need for that.
We could do that earlier this time,
Yeah.
the students were able to fill this one out, but again,
I mean,
if
more.
the board president didn't get the
if I
survey,
missed
I'm
it,
sure there's other people.
it's my
who
fault,
didn't,
but-
I don't know if it's your fault, but.
Yeah. It could
Yeah,
be.
I didn't get it either.
So,
Yeah.
yeah.
But I mean, from a,
So that doesn't bode well for our survey distribution.
but a lot of issues may be actual team issues and not necessarily merger issues.
Yeah.
So being able to isolate those through
Yeah.
a team-specific survey, and providing that feedback would be
No,
maybe
yeah.
a good.
I mean, one of the most difficult parts of coaching is managing kids.
Yeah, I recognize it's not easy. Yep.
Yeah. So, get
Um,
some feedback on how well our coaches are managing definitely would be valuable.
And then, in terms of merging all teams, what is the criteria? Is that what we're gonna do? All teams will be merged in all instances, or is there a chance where we could actually have separate teams, where we have a lot of kids, especially at the lower levels?
Right.
Is that something that we could look at?
There's no reason we can't look at it.
Yeah,
I know the few that we did look at, that we had higher numbers, it probably would have been difficult for the other school who didn't have the higher numbers to have a team on their
okay,
own.
yeah,
You know,
'Cause I think-
I mean, that could be, and the other piece is, we have to look at, if we're trying to build a program and have the coach have ownership, it doesn't necessarily make sense competitively. I mean, there's other things to consider.
yeah.
But competitively, to have, 2 different teams and then they're not together until they get to the higher level. So that's something that at least needs to be considered beyond just the numbers, but,
I mean, I
there's no
think-
reason we can't look at those things and see it,
You can look at numbers and like, just to give you an instance, like last year, we were on our own for basketball 2 years ago. And we had 7 kids on the varsity team, 5 kids on the JV team, and we had 6 modified kids. That's how many kids we had total in our whole entire program. And before the end of the season, we didn't have a JV team and we didn't have a modified team because of injuries and kids getting academic ineligibility. And so then the other kids didn't get to finish their season out. So, when you're looking at numbers, you need a large cushion for.
The other thing is there's JV and varsity, there's a pretty solid max games you can play. You go beyond that, you can't participate in sectionals, there can be other ramifications. The modified level, for our boys, for example, we had 33 kids, 32 or 33. We were able to have 3 different teams, and each team played, I think, 10 games. 12 games, so, there's more flexibility at those lower levels to do things like that. So, we're not unique as far as it goes, not making cuts, so a lot of the schools in the MAC, some even in the Delaware League, have modified teams of huge numbers of kids. So, when we send an email out and say, hey, do any of you have a third team that you want to schedule games with, we get a lot of opportunity to do that. So that's another way that we can kind of stay merged per se with larger numbers and still get the kids the experience.
I think the important thing, especially to modify, is the fundamentals and the reps. They gotta have playing time. If, however that works the best, whether it's big numbers and you have multiple teams, that way, I think that's the success of your programs. I mean, honestly. These kids, you gotta have the opportunity, otherwise you don't know what the kids are capable of, they don't know how to push themselves, and if the last thing you want is kids sitting on a bench at a modified level that never get to shine, or never get the opportunity.
This was quite some time ago, but when I was in 7th grade, we had 25 kids on the 7th grade basketball team. And Glenn Leapney was our coach, and I don't know how he decided who went to what game, but I know that I certainly didn't play 12 games. And so getting them 12 games, worked out pretty well.
And we had 3 coaches in there, and they all were able to work with the kids. We were able to break it down and go in small groups and work. It worked out pretty well for that.
I think the
certainly wasn't perfect, but
the perception seemed like people wanted even more
I know,
teams.
yeah.
That's the so I realize it's a challenge. It's just as much as you can maximize that. And then the final thing is just that I'm assuming just through the merger, the planning, that this will come together in a merged athletic handbook or something like that. I know we have our own athletic handbook, but
we've had versions of 3. We have a parent one, a student athlete one, and then a overall, actually maybe a coaching one. So that's something that I think we need to work together. We did a little bit to make sure there was nothing completely opposite in the handbooks, but as far as meshing it more, being the first year, we didn't want to go crazy and completely redo anything, but it's definitely something that moving forward that I think needs to happen. And we need to make sure our academic eligibility policies and any kind of discipline procedures for athletes is similar. It doesn't have to be exactly the same, but we don't want to have a Walton kid not be able to play, Downsville kid be able to play when they're in the same situation or vice versa.
I guess I would just comment that as for the one that goes to the parents of the athletes, as much of the details about how you do your planning and location selection or whatever you can put in there to help address those concerns, ahead of time, that would be beneficial, I think. So it probably would alleviate a lot of issues going into next season.
Yeah, set the expectations just before the school season, get over the summer.
Just one question for you, and with trying to come up with the best way to phrase it, with the competitiveness of trying to have the students be able to be competitive, and with a merger, there's numbers to do that. There also comes all the coaching staff, the assistants of the coaching staff. Do you have a plan in place, or are you working on a plan that those are going to get screened? Potential candidates would be screened at a competitive level too, not just as we've had this one for 10 years,
No,
this one's been here for 8, but this one's got a winning record of, I mean, that we can truly, because in my mind, if both schools are coming together, and we're trying to do this for the best of our kids.
We want the best people.
You want, exactly, just like we do in our classrooms, we want.
And that's a big reason why we, early on started talking about working together when we choose the coaches.
Right.
And have an evaluation process.
Yeah,
to go through
that's a piece on it, that's been something that's been missing for a while.
And that will immediately hit the beginning of the summer as we move forward, if we move forward with
Right.
approval in June, as we move forward with the establishment of the head coaches, even if there's dual coaches. So they gotta go through a process, interviews and the works and decide what's best for the program. So with that theme, what's best for the program, doesn't matter who it is,
Right.
doesn't matter what school they're from, what's best for the program.
And I think that's to me is the difficult part, because you got Townswood, you got Walton, we both have our own identity. This is a third identity, if you will. There can't be a Townswood, there can't be a Walton. If it's a merger in my mind, it's got to be, this is the merger, this is the union, this is what's moving forward. Not,
You just have, got to pay attention to your contracts too, that are in place, obviously.
right, that's what I'm saying, it's
But I mean, I don't
gonna be a
think that-
handful.
I don't think that dictates anything one way or the other, but just, obviously, you guys need to be
Right.
mindful of it.
So, but anyway, all right, good.
Okay, anybody
Glad to hear
else
that.
have anything else on the sports merger report? So more data next meeting-ish, wrap up after the season? Just kind of get us, obviously get us ahead of June, because it was important to have these discussions, not like a last-minute thing. So I think this is great to be able to just kind of baby step through and get the process in place, so that by the time it's June, it's easy, you know, we have all the decisions and discussions done. We've added, if there's no further discussion on that, we've added a special meeting on Thursday, May 23rd at 4 o'clock to accept the results of the annual meeting, the budget vote. And thank you for coming over. Appreciate it. Thank you. In order to process our paperwork for 24-25 capital A outlay project. Also for discussion, any updated information on the 24-25 budget? Meg, you're up.
You want to do that now?
Oh, yes, please.
Okay. I know there's been some questions, so I'll try to go through this, and the state aid runs make it difficult because they change, and we try to interpret those numbers, and not only do they change some numbers for this year, and they change some numbers for next year. So for this conversation, I'm going to focus on the state aid runs for next year's aid. And then if we want to touch base on this year's projected aid, we can do that too. Just keep in mind with these state aid runs, it's what they're projecting, it's the numbers they're using in the budget. So when we get those state aid runs, it doesn't mean we are going to get that exact amount of money in that aid category. Sometimes we have more relevant current information in our hands than what they're using to project the aid. So there are some categories like foundation aid, it's a pretty good estimate and you can rely on it. There are other aid categories where our aid next year is going to be based on what our expenses are this year. So they're just making an estimate. They don't know what they're going to be. I have a better sense of what our current year expenses are than they do. So the numbers on the state aid run aren't necessarily going to match the best estimate that we have that we've put in the budget in every category, okay? So just to go through the changes from the January aid run to the most recent one that came out at the end of last week. So Kevin had put together a nice chart that I think you all saw in your email. Foundation aid projection did go up about $20,000, $21,514. We could change the projection in the budget based on that because I feel like that is a pretty solid number. Going back to Dr. McDonald's email over the weekend where he had said, you know, there weren't really significant changes and he recommended we stay the course. So I didn't change anything in the budget. If the board felt strongly that they wanted to, we could do that. The next change was in the area of excess costing. The projection went up $44,000. Keep in mind the number that the state uses is an average of several years. And as we've had our costs for special education students change, this is one of those areas where we have a better sense of what our aid is going to be in that area than they do. One of the BOCES services we subscribe to is called STAC, System to Track and Account for Students or something like that. And they monitor and report all of our high-cost aid. So during the year, they keep a spreadsheet based on this year's cost, what we anticipate next year's aid would be. So our amount in our budget is not based on the state aid run, which is an average of several years. It's based on what our expenses are today. So I don't recommend changing that number because I think their projection is too high. There were some very small changes in the hardware, technology, software, textbook, those aid categories, and those are based on student counts, so depending on what the count is at the time they pull it, they could vary slightly. They weren't material enough to warrant changing anything in the budget. The next area that changes significantly was our building aid. That projected aid went up by just over $300,000. We had already included a higher number in our proposed budget for next year, because they're only projecting aid on projects that we've completed and filed the final cost report for. So they're only doing it based on what they have. We know what projects we have in process and what reports we're planning to file by December to get aid on next year. So for example, the Townsend Elementary School project, which is going to be finished this summer and planning to file that report by December, we'll get aid on next year, and that's not included in their numbers. So as we've filed additional information with them, their aid has gone up. Our projected aid in the budget is actually even higher than what was in the state aid run that we got last week, because their number doesn't include the Townsend Elementary project yet, because we haven't, the flooring project, because we haven't filed that yet. So the number in our budget is based on my work with fiscal advisors and the final cost reports on our capital projects, not based on the state aid runs.
So can you just briefly explain the difference in that? You have a difference in there of 306,948 to the positive. Where are we actually falling when we ask for the state aid?
So their first projection was $700,000 in building aid. They increased it $300,000 to $1,020,000. We actually have in our budget for next year $1,367,000.
And is that, so we think we're gonna exceed their budget run
Right,
by
we know,
306?
because we know we think we're gonna exceed their budget run by more like $340,000, because we know that we have final cost reports we're gonna file before December.
Right. That's all good
The
for us, correct?
306 is just the change from what they projected in January to what they projected last week.
Yep.
Our number is even higher because we're taking into account the expenses that we're planning on for Townsend.
My point is that's even higher revenue than we were anticipating.
Right.
No,
That's part of the runs.
the number in our budget is higher than their runs. Our number is higher than their number.
Okay, so our revenue that we projected, I say we as a district, of course, I didn't project it. The runs that we have at 1.3 million is what we've assumed revenue coming in. So what the number, if we think our number is better and more accurate than theirs, and we've used 1.3 million, we think it's 1.34, so a $40,000 increase to that. Should we be reflecting on the 24-25 estimate that we're looking at as a group, instead of 306,948, difference between their run and what we projected, budget to budget, what we looked at as acceptance for our revenue versus what you're calculating now, shouldn't we be just looking at 40,000 higher?
I believe you're referring to Kevin's, you're looking at the
I am looking, yeah, I'm looking at
1,300,000.
Kevin's, correct.
That's for this year.
Yeah.
That number is for this year. What they're projecting for next year is the last column, the 1,020,745.
Right.
What we have in the budget is 1,367,569. So we already have budgeted higher than what they're projecting
As a revenue.
as a revenue.
And my question is, you still think we're gonna be 44,000 ahead of that?
No, I think we're gonna be at the 1,367,000, which I think we're gonna be at the 1,367,000.
So long and the short of it, you're very confident in the budget we have together today, going forward with it. I'm just,
If I were gonna recommend any changes, the only change that I would recommend, I don't really feel like any of these are significant enough that we need to make a change.
Okay.
If the board felt strongly that they wanted to increase foundation aid to the number that's in the latest runs, that $21,000, we could do that. But these fluctuate enough that we're probably gonna see that fluctuation between the various aid categories categories anyway. I mean, if it were $120,000, I might feel different. I would argue against changing any of the other numbers.
Okay.
So,
So 21, on this spreadsheet, it looks like 21,514 and 44,386 and 306. It looks like we have the difference between the two. I should probably let you speak to this, but 372, 462. You're saying 300,000 of that really is not, so the net difference we should be looking at is more like 72,462.
I don't even think you should be including the 44, because again, that's an 8th category where they are averaging a number of years.
she's just saying, look at the first one.
The only one that I think is a solid number is the 21,000.
21,000, yeah. And so Meg, just to be clear, what you presented in March, right? The community budget forum, our state aid was 508,622, so it's staying the same.
Yes, and yes, it
Okay.
is not, what I've included in the budget has not changed from that forum. I know that you did send an email today with the summary of the budget,
Yeah.
and the state aid number was slightly
So the
different.
numbers are moving around in different categories, but
The difference between those two numbers that you sent today is
Yeah.
$13,720.
okay.
And what that is there's a particular payment that we get, it's called small government assistance. And based on where it's coded in our revenues, it's included in the budget as considered state aid. But it's not something that ever appears on the state aid runs that we get, nor does it appear, nor is it something that we really highlighted during the budget discussions. So it's a number that was in the budget previously, it's still in the budget, but I can see why it created some confusion because it was different than the number we looked at on that slide. But it's not, it's because of how it's coded, it gets reported as state aid, but it's not included in the state aid runs.
Yeah, well, I think the confusion is actually because the numbers are the same, but we are getting a little bit more foundation aid.
I did not change the foundation aid number in the budget.
Okay,
And that's where I'm saying,
okay,
I don't see it as a significant enough change in the grand scheme of things that at the 11th hour, it really warranted a change, you know, and Dr. McDonald, like I said, had sent his email saying it's a little, but it's not much. I recommend we stay the course. So that's what I did.
okay.
Like I said, if the board felt strongly they really wanted to change that $21,000 in the budget, we could certainly do that, and I could modify these numbers pretty quickly. My question would be, what are we adjusting on the expense side? Is it appropriated? You know, what are we adjusting if we add that revenue? Are we not on the expense side? Are we decreasing appropriated fund balance, or what are we doing?
Great. And it's not enough to get us below the tax cap levy. Yeah.
What is the dollar figure we are between the tax cap and 3.5% again?
It's just shy of $90,000. It's 89 something.
So 89 and then 21 off that. 69, is it worth $69,000 to go to a supermajority? To override the tax cap? I think that's a question overall. We'll discuss it later, but is it worth going to supermajority over $69,000?
Well, if you stay at the three and a half, it'd be $90,000, but.
Yeah, I'm just subtracting off the 89, taking 21 off that and trying to come to a, you know, pluses and minuses, I guess. To override we have to get a supermajority. Is it worth this year, probably knowing that no other district's gonna take the step forward to go over their cap this year to prepare for next year? You know, I don't think my personal opinion, I don't know if taxpayers are gonna understand, we're trying to prepare for next year by overriding the cap for $69,000 and risking a supermajority, and for some reason that doesn't work, we're back to taking that back down anyway and going back out to a vote to cap, and if that doesn't work, then you have to go to contingency. So that's my only question, is it really worth trying to push for the $69,000 just to have the cumbersome act of overcoming a supermajority?
Yeah, well, I think we're headed towards fiscal stress, right? That's been shown that this will be our second year of operating at a loss, and it's projected to continue. So eventually, we're gonna move into susceptible, moderate, and then significant physical stress categories if we don't, if something doesn't change.
Right.
If we don't cut costs or cut expenses and, or get more revenue.
Yeah.
So we're looking at taking it small bites, or we wait until it's a big bite. And could be really uncomfortable.
I mean, there's so many
So it's-
unknowns for next year's, what's gonna happen next year.
Oh,
But I
yeah.
think that if there's a
Foundation
wild
aid, yeah.
swing for foundation aid next year, you're gonna have a bunch of schools in the exact same situation. You won't have us out in front trying to push it on our own to make a statement or to try to get ahead of it. But, you know, I just think that's what we have to debate is figure out whether literally, because I don't think $69,000 is gonna take us out of that projection of going into physical stress, you know what I mean? So, but it
Yeah.
is almost 1% of our levy, right? Our levy's 76,000%.
It's 7.2 million. It was 7.2 million this year.
No, 1% of our total levy,
It's
Is 72,000.
72,000.
72,000, yeah. So,
This would leave us, so if we go with the 3.5, that leaves us at 6%, right, on the fund balance?
Yes,
Okay.
which was the number that the finance committee had talked about not wanting to go.
Right.
Well, I think you're gonna get there sooner or later. And I think if we go out with a smaller, I understand the 69,000, but we can't survive staying under the tax cap. And I almost think you try it. If it doesn't work, and we gotta drop back, at the very least, you have that we tried to make good financial decisions. And when it blows up next year, when we go to people and say, all right, listen, you wouldn't let us make small steps last year, it's a big step this year potentially, what are you gonna do?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think I think we're leading, I don't like increasing the taxes that way, I don't like paying the increases of taxes that way. But the expression, pay me now or pay me later, is gonna come around. And I don't have a lot of faith in the leadership in the future coming in our state, let alone just where, that's a whole different topic, but anyway. The whole thing is, I think, I'm more comfortable with taking a baby step on it now and seeing what, because I think we gotta take a stand with it, and we're gonna have to cross that bridge sooner or later. And I know we're gonna be out in front, where I will take some heat for it.
pretty
But-
good chance.
No, I'm pretty confident, but if, I'm hoping,
But we also have an opportunity to control the messaging on this, right? Because Dr. McDonald also, you offered up to share a draft.
Yep, I have
Right,
two
so we can-
versions that I'll be sending out tomorrow
Yeah.
to get your feedback on. As a board.
I think one of the, like, I understand that it's a hard sell, but I think one of the important things to remember is we're not just going out and saying, we want to exceed the tax cap. We have a history over the last several years of things we have done before taking that measure to control costs. So we reviewed at the last meeting the number of positions we've reduced over time. You know, there's other steps we have taken to control costs. It's not like we're saying, oh, let's just exceed the tax cap. We're kind of taking a several-pronged approach to trying to address this problem. We also have we're not just saying, well, really our gap was 1.4 million, so we raised taxes the whole way. Like, we're using several tools to try to address this problem, not just taxes. And I think that that's part of the response if people are concerned about the tax increase.
Can I ask a question? So if we were to drop down to the tax cap, we would have to appropriate more funds from the
Reduce
fund balance.
expenses.
Right, which though, that amount would actually exceed the amount that we have remaining in fund balance. So we would actually go negative on it with the current expenses that are budgeted.
I don't know what you mean by would exceed. We wouldn't
So
go
we
negative.
would, so we're suggesting we're gonna appropriate, what, 1.4
Right.
next year.
Yeah.
So if we reduce to 2.26, we will have to increase the fund balance,
By about $90,000.
and it will go negative.
It wouldn't go negative next year. It would take, we're at 6%.
But I'm saying if you did the math, the appropriated amount is gonna be higher.
Yes.
And if it would show that we would not have enough money left in the fund balance based on the following year's budget.
If you're comparing it 2 years out.
Yeah, 2 years out.
Oh,
So,
assuming that the next year we have to appropriate the same amount?
exactly,
Yes,
right?
yes,
It's-
you're correct. You're, like, next year, we probably won't be able to
So,
appropriate 1.5 million.
right, so we're on the edge of going negative with the fund balance.
If we
Is-
continue appropriate,
is my
if
point.
something
Two years
doesn't
out.
change to where we don't have to appropriate the
Right.
same amount to balance the budget, yes. That's what fiscal stress is, you know what I mean? You have no
Yeah.
fund balance, you have no.
This is all assuming that the expenses continue
Yeah.
at the same rate and we don't get any other sources of revenue.
Correct.
Yep.
We did say if we did increase our foundation aid that we would decrease on the tax side. Do you guys want to still consider that, or do you want the 21 to stay at the 3.5%? That's the only thing we'll have to finally discuss before we vote on that. Is what if you want to leave it at 3.5? That just puts a $21,000 of additional foundation aid. You would just decrease your input from the fund balance to make that up if you stayed at 3.5. Or you would take it off your tax levy at whatever that would end up being. It would be a fraction of a percentage. So,
I think we need to stay at the 3.5, do a small bite. It's gonna go up, it's rarely if ever gonna come back down any. And you really can't trust Albany too much for funding. We've gotta look at what we can do for our own community. 3.5 is not that bad. And we have a backup plan. If it doesn't go through, we can do it again without that, but. I'd rather see 3.5 this year than 6 next year.
My preference is to put it to the voters. Give them an opportunity to weigh in
okay, well,
As is.
if you
at
want.
the 3.5, yeah, the 3.5.
We'll have a chance to discuss it right before that resolution, so if you guys want, we'll discuss it a little bit then. So our 24-25 budget hearing will be on Tuesday, May 7th at 6 p.m. along with our regular business meeting. And then our annual meeting budget vote will take place at the bus garage between noon and 9 p.m. on Tuesday, May 21st. That's all our discussion items.
I did have one to add. if
Okay, go
possible.
ahead.
Corey sent the NISBA has a budget update on Thursday, I think, right, at noon?
Webinar.
There's a webinar,
Oh, there's a
free webinar.
Yeah, free
If
webinar.
you'd like to.
Yeah, I would like to attend that.
Okay.
Everybody got that email, just let Corey know, you have to register for it. Okay, and next, sorry to make you wait, we are up for representatives from the Ogden Free Library are present. And welcome, if you want to step up to the podium and.
I'll sit right here.
Okay.
Good evening, I'm Mary Joy, and I'm the president of the Board of Trustees of the library. And listening to your conversation, it's so spot on for all of us. Fiscal stress, that's what it's all about. And, you know, we put our letter in to be included on that ballot, on the same page, or 2 different votes, but we are very happy that you include us there. The state says that we have to, so that's the way to go. We're asking for, we have a big ask this year. However, it's a very, very necessary ask. We supplement, we were given a very nice endowment several years ago, but we use about $100,000 or more of that endowment every year just to break even. That endowment will not last. We might have 8 to 10 years. We don't have other ways to get money other than through our tax levy. We don't know if anybody will leave us a large sum of money again. That's probably a once-in-a-lifetime deal for the library. And that's why we're asking for such a large amount of money. We've gone, just as you have been discussing, you know, to get your message out to the community. And I think in your packs, you probably have our information, totally transparent of why, how, what we've done, what we will do, all the things that we offer to the community. So this is Rachel. She's on the board And this is Heather. She is our director. So if you have any questions, please, feel free, ask away.
Were there any initial questions after reviewing our information sheet?
I think all this went out in the reporter today, right?
That's it as well, yeah.
Yes.
Last week, sorry.
Last week. I said, we've done what you were discussing doing.
All of the education.
Getting all the information out to the community beforehand, so they have it. As I said, total transparency. So if you have questions, please, we can answer them. We'll be happy to do so.
I read through it, and your question and answers pretty much took care of anything I would have as a, just obviously as the voters should know that, and the answers that's addressed here, that this is the only mechanism that the state has to facilitate you to put something on a petition. That's why it's on our budget vote, same day. It's just a mechanism to get the votes out there. So that's why it's included. They are separate, but that's why it's included there.
What is the levy?
Number 6.
Does anyone have any questions?
Just another thing I wanted to add, I went back through my personal tax bills for the library from 2017 through last year. And for the first, altogether for those years, was up to 11.1% increase only. Some years they only asked for 1.1%, which probably wasn't good planning on their part at that time. So, and it came down to $2.44 over 7 years. So the library has not been well funded.
Unfortunately, our state aid between grants and our library funnel directly from the Department of Education is in total 7% of our funding. So that's where we get our state aid is 7%. And that's, again, only from grants that we have to then apply for. And then 50% comes from our local tax base right now. And it's not, like Mary said, it's just not sustainable. We had to transfer 40% of our budget from our endowment. And we used half $500,000 from the endowment to match a grant for the restoration of the library a few years ago, which we've had rave reviews about how beautiful it is. We did this big 4-county library road trip this summer, and that was the biggest thing that everybody said when they came from all over all 4 counties was that they heard Walton had a beautiful library, and so to be able to keep that in its historic condition was really important to the board. Even several years ago, using a 1.1% tax increase, so our tax cap is 2% generally, so we did vote to overcome that for this year. To try to meet the needs of our budget going forward.
And also to secure those investment funds for future renovations and upkeep of the building.
So we don't run out of money like you guys seem like you're a little scared too.
It's a scary thing, for sums of money,
but we did try to do a several pronged approach as well for educating the public on what's going on and what that means for them and what it means for their individual households as well, so that it doesn't hopefully seem too scary. Yeah, the total number is not expected of each household.
Does anyone have any?
So I know there was an article in the Reporter. Is any of this other information, like how are you distributing the rest of the FAQs?
We gave them to several different local businesses for them to distribute, and they went out into the newsletter list. Anybody who already subscribes to our live library newsletter at the library. And the Reporter was a big one because, of course, that's how a lot of, I would say, voters.
Yeah.
I mean, some of you have worked at the voting booth, and I'm assuming a lot of the people who actually go out and vote are a crossover of the people who read the Reporter, demographically speaking.
Well, thank you for taking the time.
Yes.
And
thank you for
come
having
up
us.
here.
Thank you.
And good good luck, for sure.
You too.
Yeah,
Yes,
likewise.
Appreciate it.
It's a difficult time, and I don't see it getting better. No.
Okay,
Night, everybody.
Corey,
Thank you.
Have a good night,
Thank you.
Maggie.
any additions to the agenda?
We do not.
Okay. Are we on to our consent agenda? All right. Any discussion on any individual pieces of the consent agenda that anyone wants to discuss? No discussion, any? I'd entertain a motion to accept the consent agenda.
I'll make a motion.
Second.
Motion second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That's carried. Under new business, first we have accepting donations. We'd like to accept the following donations with sincere appreciation. $58 from Boston Obedient to the boys varsity baseball program to help purchase a new indoor batting cage. $60 from the Catskill Mountain Antique Engine and Machinery Club to the Walton FFA chapter towards purchase of jackets. We have a motion to accept the donations.
I'll make the motion.
Second.
Motion second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That's carried. Okay. Any further discussion on adopting the 24-25 proposed budget? And right now, it is a budget amount of $25,039,763. Unchanged, it would be at a 3.5% rate, tax rate. So any further discussion on the adoption of the budget? Any further questions for Meg? Anything and everything is on the table.
I'll move it.
Second.
Motion second to adopt the 24-25 budget. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That is carried. Next, we have adopt the 24-25 property tax report card. Any discussion on that? We have a second on that?
Second.
Motion second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That is carried. We have approval of the date, time, and places of the regular monthly meetings of the Board of Education.
I'll make the motion.
Second.
Motion second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's carried. And new business E, we have personnel appointments. Mark Lamoureux, administrative, per diem, effective 5/2/24 through 6/26/24. Any discussion on that? If not, I entertain a motion.
Make a motion.
We have a second?
Second.
Motion seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Appointments carried. We went through our tenure appointments earlier, so now we're up to policy update. Mr. Weir, if you please.
So we have two policies as part of our annual policy review. 1050, annual district election and budget vote, and 1120, school district records. So please review those at your convenience.
Next, we have our policy second reading.
All right, for second reading tonight, we have 2325 video conferencing board meetings, 2340 notice of meetings, 3000 implementation of goals and objectives, 4327 homebound instruction, 4111 textbook selection and adoption, 5210.1 prom policy, 5605 student voter registration and pre-registration, 8520 free and reduced price meal services, and 9260 emergency conditional appointments.
we have a motion to adopt those as a second reading?
I'll make the motion.
Second.
Motion second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Those are adopted. And finally, we are up to administrative remarks. Yes, sir.
Sure, I'll start by highlighting what's first on my report, the cohort summary for the class of 2024. And I put this on there just so that you can see how our cohort did. I think we ended up with about 82% still enrolled. That's a really big difference from last year. If you remember last year, our cohort still enrolled, I think was 97%. They were able to ride those, those COVID exemptions through high school and didn't have really the same sort of rigor that this group has been exposed to, even though they've had a portion of their high school career under those COVID exemptions for Regents exams. And, you're starting to see that hit kids a little bit with this group. 82% still enrolled. It's a smaller class to begin with. I think, ending up now to 53. Last year, I believe we were in the mid to high 60s. So that's just a snapshot of our cohort.
Question, the students who moved out of district, though, did they re-enroll in another district?
So that's something that we follow up on.
So those potential four may.
They may not harm us.
Correct, so the 82.8, if they enroll somewhere else, that could go up.
It could change, correct.
And the 7 dropped out, that there are 7 that have left school in this district, is there any of them that move on to another community and then leave, or is it all from
If
just?
they enroll one day in another district,
It's their problem.
it's the other district's issue.
Okay.
So like, if we have somebody move in, and they come here for one day and then don't come back, it's our issue.
So do we track that at all?
Yep, the state does, we do with the, in school tool, and our register information, it gets pushed up, that's part of what the registrar does.
So is any of that, what is there, 7 under that situation? Where somebody has enrolled into Walton in just a short period of time and then just.
I don't know. I can click down through the reporting to give, this is on the level 1 stuff. You have that big grid. I think you guys have seen it before. And that number is actually a link. I can click on that link to get a better idea of the story behind those 7.
I was just curious if that number is a representation of somebody that is if you'll pardon my, whatever, quote unquote, local, has born and raised in Walton district, or if it is somebody that has moved in from someplace else. And just because you don't know what they're moving in with, what type of grief or whatever they're, I'm just curious, that's all.
Yeah, I can certainly follow up on what the 7 really are. And, each cohort is so different. They're exposed to so many different things, have different experiences that, you're gonna get those variations throughout cohort to cohort.
I mean, either way, it's still too many. I'm just curious of the background.
What was the situation you were just asking about, where the number could increase? What was it?
The students who moved out of district before, I was just asking if they had re-enrolled in another district. Because
Okay.
I did the quick math, the 4 is included in the 53
Okay.
of current enrollment. So
Oh,
if they, that'll go up to 57 if they enrolled somewhere else.
Okay.
So it'd be a higher percentage of graduation.
So right now they're taken as a loss, basically.
Correct,
Okay.
until
Got it.
they register and that information kicks, and we know. So what happens is the district sends a records request to us, because they have to get the current records of the student in Walton. That triggers us to know they've enrolled, so then we go into our system and we identify them as enrolled in another school, and then that changes it up to the state level.
Gotcha. How is that number, just, let's say we're like 5 years or 10 years, is this average or the percentage?
So for my time as principal, it's really tough for me to say, because most of my years have been with COVID, where, it was skewed. So this is really the first set I've had where it's, they don't have those exemptions and passes the way they did. So we can look back probably historically.
We have that. We have it on our data sheet. That's the graduation rate. It's just different language.
Oh, okay.
So I created that for 20 years.
Yep.
Going back, so the history's there. I interrupted you right in the middle of it, go ahead. Anything else to
I think
highlight?
that's it.
Okay. Sorry about that.
Driver's ed,
Driver's ed,
nice try.
BOCES has been looking for us since January. I actually just got some information on somebody who might be interested. Mike and I are reviewing whether or not that's gonna be a possibility for us. So we're still plugging away. We have 22 students interested right now, which that alone is over what a driver ed instructor can work with. They have to limit it to 16. They gotta work with 4 sessions, 4 people to a car. So we're already at a max for interest for kids, which is great.
Yeah.
Hopefully we can get something together for the summer.
If this person's interest is genuine, the details will work itself out. You're not gonna have that follow-up
We talked about that.
You don't know that, I'm telling you now, we'll be able to figure this out.
But we've talked about that that's a huge asset for our community.
Correct.
Having young drivers have that opportunity that we've lost through the years, that would be great give back to make sure that happens.
And the way that works through the BOCES is all the expenses from each district. BOCES hires the driver. Sometimes BOCES hires the driver and the district hires the driver, depending on the contractual rate of pay. And all the BOCES, all the expenses go in, fuel costs, the whole works, and then it gets divided out by the number of students that are in it. And each school gets, if we have 22, it's 22 by that amount, and that's what our cost is beforehand. So it's really an economical way to provide such a service. So we'll get there, hopefully, as long as we have somebody. Last year we had no one anywhere. So this is a glimmer of hope. Well,
So this month is the New York State assessment. So our students took the ELA assessment just recently. They'll be taking the math assessment at the end of the month and science assessment for 5th graders only in the beginning of May. So our students are working really hard and our teachers are really trying to support them through this. Opt-outs are looking really good, very minimal. So things are going good in that area. I also just want to highlight our 5th graders. They just did their museum march around the school to raise money for their New York City trip, so that's going well as well. So things are going good. We also have the spelling bee. So lots of good things. We're trying to balance, the assessments with some positives and keep the kids motivated to keep going.
We also did the ELA, you have to be 6 to 8 in our building tests. Had over 90% participate in all 3 grade levels, so that's a huge increase from where we were a few years ago. And one thing that I didn't put, I don't think I put that on there either, but the other thing I didn't put on my report is I could say with about 99.9% certainty that all of our teams this year will be scholar athlete teams, which according to Ms. Green, who is our athletic historian, since she's been here forever, that's never happened before. So that'll make us not get confused, either a school of excellence or distinction. I don't remember which one it is. We were the opposite one last year when we had 12 out of 16 teams. And this year with all our teams, will be the other one.
under the merged team, just.
Under the merge, yes. So that includes Walton and Downsville students for most of our sports, and the Walton, Downsville, and Delaware Academy students for our wrestling team. So it's they're truly student athletes.
I remember a couple of years ago saying how proud I was that we only had 2 teams that didn't make that. That's amazing that you've gotten that quality of student athletes. That is great. Great balance.
It's the mandatory help that Mr. Loomis put on. Which I seriously think that has something to do with, to be honest. A lot of those kids probably wouldn't do the work, now are being forced to, so.
Any other questions for? Okay, so just one comment about the 3A testing. We've talked about about the opt-outs and about what is the real impact of the opt-outs if students don't take the test. And with the accountability measures and having to dive in with us being a targeted district and understand what the measures are. The big difference between now and what it was years ago, when we had a little different attitude in the printing and approach on that, is that the denominator, when they're dividing up, it's not by students who took the test. That's what it used to be. So if you had less students take the test, you had your score, okay, all things equal, how did they do? Now it's what students are continuously enrolled. So if you have, 80 kids continuously enrolled, and you have 50 kids take the assessment, that denominator is still going to be 80 is continuously enrolled. And that significantly impacts your overall value when it comes to a rating. It drops you in a hurry.
Yeah.
So it's very, very important that we continue to encourage not only our students, our parents, on the importance of us to get a solid value and get an understanding of how our students are doing. So just wanted to add that, because that gave me more clarity. But there's the difference. We always ask that, what's the impact? Well, that's the impact. Right now, that's one of the impacts. And I'm sure they changed it for that reason as well in the measurement. The only remarks I have is capital outlay. As we know, we've maintained a $100,000 capital outlay project. We talked to facilities on where are we going. We don't have a facilities meeting scheduled. We gotta get this pinned down. So I'm bringing it to the table today on what those items are going to be. We know that we're finishing the Townsend School wall boards. There's one piece, and then there's an amount of money, estimated amount of money left, approximately $25,000 beyond that. So we need two other pieces. What we're looking at as proposing to do, what we're looking to do, is the sidewalls are the one item and the bid items, and then two adults. And the two adults priority would be the chimney cap, where the pieces have been falling down, and we've got that cordoned off for safety. Obviously, we have concrete falling down, we need to take care of that, safety related. So that's number one adult priority. And then the second priority would be still being on safety, which would be the fencing. One of the two, we're breaking up the total fencing. The parking lot side fencing, which is 3 gates, and extending the fence, replacing the fence behind the basketball court that's so flimsy as we know, and connecting it all the way down to the pathway going across, and adding a gate there to provide some security during recess, which will help with the angst in our elementary office of not having a student decide they're gonna bolt out that back pathway. And then the North Street gate, that 50-foot gate with an additional that doesn't exist, as another adult. And then we'll see where it lies, and then we'll come together and make a decision as a unit, facilities and board for what happens with the bids. We in agreement? Can I get a head nod on this so I can move these guys forward?
Yes.
Sounds good. All right. That's all I need.
Did they
Yes, sir.
increase the amount for the?
They did not,
They
in the
did
budget.
not.
They didn't touch it. They tried to go to 250,
Yeah.
as you know, from 100,000 to 250, they didn't touch it. Yeah, and right now, one of the reasons why I'm trying to move this along is they're talking, as I think I said last month, I get over 6 months now for the review of the state. The expedited review, the external review, they don't have in place. So everything's going through, even a $100,000 project right now, they're talking about over 6 months. So we want to make sure that we can direct our architect now to get everything in line so that the day after that budget passes, after our special meeting where we accept the budget results, that next day, Wirt can crank out the documents that he needs, and then he can get it submitted immediately to start the clock on that 6 month. The 6 month is gonna put us November, December by the time we go out with bids, and then we've only got the spring to get it done. With these specific, particular items, that's okay, we can get it done this spring, we can get it done by June 30th, because we can do the work with school in session, for all this, and we can do the work with the walls, finishing the walls out on one of those 2 weeks, February or April, and definitely get it done. It'll just take them a few days, as we know with what they've done already. So this year, we're okay. That's something we'll have to talk about as we move forward, as a facilities committee, on what exactly do we target for those things if we're going to have this kind of a delay, because a lot of this work we can't get done if we start it in February. to the end of the year, so, more fun. That's all I have.
Can I just ask a question, or, the communication survey?
Yep.
I did get the call this evening.
Yep.
And I saw it on Facebook as well, so just putting it out there for the audience that we're looking for feedback, right?
Yes,
As a district,
absolutely,
yeah.
looking for feedback, so if we can, expanded it from the original, as you can see from it, it's a brief survey, but we're looking at all of our communication information dissemination. Looking for feedback on all types of areas, we wanna know where people are getting their information, where they have struggled, what are their thoughts, so that we can take it into consideration for not only possibility of website adjustments or changes or additions, also looking at our systems, newsletters, processes, feedback for the principals if anything comes in regarding teachers or regarding them, just feedback in general. So we've already got, yesterday, or this morning, I looked at, I think we're at 21, 22 responses, and it hadn't gone out in school messenger. So by tomorrow, I'm hopeful that we get up to 100 immediately. But we'll see what happens.
And it's just like 2 weeks, right, to.
Yeah, to May 6th.
Yeah, okay.
Yep. Okay, any other questions?
Good here. Thanks, Kevin. I did see that on Facebook, but everybody needs a reminder for sure. Okay, we have no further discussion, nothing else can come for us. I'll take a motion to adjourn.
We need to go to executive session.
Oh, I forgot. Apologize. A motion to go into exec.
You're
We're taking action
taking
afterwards?
No action.
I was trying to get out of an exec. Any action afterwards? No?
No.
Okay, motion to go into exec. Adjourn.
And to invite the principals.
Like principals enlisted. Yeah.
So done.
I'll make the motion.
Thank you. Thank you. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?